Hello YouTube, and welcome to episode number 3 of my, video blog or whatever. I'm not sure what exactly it is. This is my YouTube channel attempt. Alright, so this was supposed to be episode number 2 within the insanity last weekend with Black Lives Matter, and I had to go and make a full 40-minute video about my thoughts on that subject and just race in general, and yeah, that one kind of got out of hand. I'm trying to keep in this one 5 to 10 minute range. So, the topic for this episode is going to be about me, who I am, and how I got to where I am. But it's not just a boring chronicle of my history. Nobody wants to watch that. But I am a real-life super. Not a real-life super. That's not what my Twitter handle, despite what the LGBT community thinks, for some reason they tagged me on some kind of list. And I was like, oh. Yeah, it's one of those things is I made the name and I didn't realize that people might, I'm super, thanks for asking. Yeah. No, it's the idea behind it was that I'm a real-life superhero, but I'm not a hero yet because I haven't done anything yet. So you can't be a hero, but you can have superpowers, or you can be a real-life superhuman, just not a hero yet. That is the intention behind that Twitter handle. And that's why this is not a chronicling of my history. This is an origin story. Hit that theme music. There goes my hero, watch him as he goes. There goes my hero, he's ordinary. Alright, and who doesn't love an origin story? Because the idea is, you know how Peter Parker was a big nerd and all the women ignored him, and he was kind of like, even the rejects rejected him. That's me. Sort of. At least for the most part. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's generally the feeling I have. And I'm like, I have all of the makings of an amazing superhero. I just need to actually get the powers. So I'm still have my fingers crossed for the nuclear reaction or the spider bite or some bullies dumping me in a vat of toxic waste. It can happen, right? So everything up until that point has happened. So I've got all of the makings of a superhero. Like, maybe when they develop that super soldier serum, I can, grow taller, and for some reason I'll be running down the streets and my pecs will be flapping around for no apparent reason. That was so weird on Captain America. Like, I know he's strong, but he definitely looked like he needed a man bra. That's... whatever. It didn't look like he was doing that on purpose. That's all I'm saying. It's not like Bolo Young or Terry Crews, where they're doing it on purpose. The whole pecs jiggle or pecs flex. Anyway, so I am 31 years old. I know I don't look it. That's because I don't go in the sun. The sun is my enemy. I'm like a vampire. Maybe that'll be the source of my superpowers. But, yeah, so I stay out of the sun, and I have Asian heritage, which I don't know if you've met older Asian people. They never look their age. And it's like there's this magical cutoff point with Asians where they look like they're 20 from the time that they're 20 or maybe 25, 30-ish. They look like they're that same age until they hit like 60 or 70, and then like bam, they turn all white and these wrinkles come out of nowhere and they look ancient. So that's my goal, is when I'll stay looking young until I hit 60, and then boom, Crypt Keeper with the Fu Manchu. Actually, that would be pretty cool. So I don't mind that. I don't know if that's actually gonna happen or whatever, because like I said, mixed heritage, you never know. Okay, so about me. Oh, this is probably one of the biggest things. I don't know if you've noticed this. I did occasionally flash my fingers up in front of the camera. But that's something significant, and that's one of the main reasons that I am who I am, and that it's kind of shaped my views on a lot of things in the world. When I was 9 months old, I saw something bright, shiny, and pretty, and I decided to put my hand in it. You know, I wanted to touch it and grab it, and it third-degree burns on my 3 fingers. And it's one of those things is I still haven't learned that pretty and bright things will burn you. I still haven't learned that lesson. I'm referring to women. Anyway, yeah, and if you'll notice, so it's these 3 fingers that got third-degree burns. These fingers look normal, and I've got full flexibility in them. And this finger, this little guy, is what that's what my brothers have called or dubbed the bullet finger. See how the nail kind of curves down, and it's shorter than it should be, like compared to the ring finger on my other hand. It's also the ring finger on my left hand, and that's, like I said, that shapes a lot of my views of the world. And I've come to the understanding that when it comes to love, I will always be burned. Now it may be that because I've got that in my mind, that's always what happens. Who knows? It might just be, it's probably mostly just coincidence. Mostly. And ever since I was 13, I have been writing my own songs and books. I don't think I've ever actually finished any of them, which is kind of upsetting, but I have an entire series in my head of books that I'm going to get around to releasing whenever I don't have a job. So entire books, hopefully albums. So when I was 13, I was writing these stories, and I often retreat into my head. I had friends and that sort of thing, but I didn't feel like I could relate to most other people. So even though I got along, I generally joined in the conversation. I, went and I was invited to people's houses and things like that. But most of the time, I found myself just retreating into my own head and coming up with stories. And when I wasn't doing that, I was playing video games or reading stories. And my favorite types of video games, because there's video games and there's video games, right? There's video games like Castlevania where the storyline is Dracula's there, and then you go and, you fight your way to the top, and there's not much story. And then there's RPGs, which are my favorite type of video game because there is an engrossing story, and my favorite game probably of all time is Final Fantasy II, also known as Final Fantasy IV, because that's the actual Japanese number for it. And it was really, really cool, very engaging story that's got all these twists and turns of characters showing up, being heroes, sacrificing themselves for the team, being decommissioned, or whatever the story event where they can't, they can no longer help you, and so then they get left behind because somebody's got to save the world, and then a new ally will show up, and and at the end, the coolest part was that everybody came back together at the end. And this is something I've seen emulated since then, but I had not, I had never seen anything that was like that until Final Fantasy II. It's been, one of the coolest part about Avatar is they found a way to bring everybody else back to the final part of it, and everybody's got a part to play in the final encounter, and it was just freaking, that's an amazing series. The Last Airbender, not the Na'vi, whatever. And not the Shyamalan movie. No. I hope that they get a second chance to do that movie and do it right and break it up into like 9 movies where there's 3 movies per chapter. Or per book. Yeah, book. Anyway. So going back to the Divergent thing, I would sit at the table where the kids talked about nothing but Star Wars, pretty much like every lunch break or whatever, whatever. Don't understand those kids. I enjoyed Star Wars. I wasn't obsessed where I could talk about it for every day. Then I'd go and sit with the kids who talked about sports, and then I didn't know all of the sports stats or whatever, and but I could hold my own-ish or whatever, and then I would move around to a bunch of different tables. And that was mostly during middle school. Going to a public school, obviously things kind of definitely shrunk the demographic. So you pretty much knew everybody, and even though I had my cluster of friends, I still found myself retreating into my head and writing stories and that sort of thing. And so when it got time to graduate, I always thought that I would either become an author or I would go out and direct and make movies. That's still a passion of mine. I still think there's time for that, although now it's kind of put on the back burner until I can set myself up where I no longer need to work. And so when I was 18, I actually graduated on my 18th birthday, and there was a surprise party. I don't know if it was that same night or it was later that week, and it was all movie themed, which is kind of cool. And while we're talking about movies, I'll talk about some of my favorite movies. I'll just go over my top 5. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The Fifth Element, Fight Club, Sin City, and Hero with Jet Li. Shortly after graduating, my cousin sold me her car, so she had gotten a new car and she sold me her car for pretty cheap. And my 2 older brothers were still at the house, and they were, I think, about 20 and 21 at the time, because I had just turned 18. I think it was a couple of weeks after graduation. I was still trying to get a job and trying to get myself in order. And my parents had decided that it was time. They needed to kick my older brothers out of the house. Well, it's time to be on your own, and I thought, they can't. They're not in a position to, but I can, because I don't have responsibilities at the moment. I don't have pay, I don't have any bills. I don't have any, I'm free to do as I choose. And so I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go. I know your goal was to kick them out, but I'm going to use this opportunity. I'm gone. I'm out of here. I'm 18, I'm an adult, I'm done. And so I moved out of the house, and I had nowhere to go, and my first thought was I'm going to drive to California or whatever, but then I didn't have enough money for gas. I had about $100 to my name, and that was about it. So I packed everything up in my car, and I left. And I didn't know where to go, and I drove around for a couple hours before I stopped at one of my friend's house and just kind of parked the car in front of the house and fell asleep in the car. The next morning, his dad, knocked on my window and just kind of had the, WTF look on his face. And so they ended up letting me stay in their basement, because there was a fully furnished basement. That's where my friend was living. That's where his bed and all that stuff. So I was crashed on his couch for about a week or so, and did a bunch of applications, got hired on at Target and Super Salad. I was trying to go to school at the same time, and I just got burnt out, as I had no time for sleep and any of that. I mean, the way I saw it, the dean was trying to indoctrinate me with all his stupid nonsense hippie crap, where he's got me reading philosophers that are famous for jerking off in public, and I'm like, in what universe is that person not considered like a homeless, crazy person? Instead of, no, he's this really cool philosopher that people need to follow what he was saying. No, that's the kind of person, that's the kind of person who belongs under a bridge living out of a grocery cart. Who would take that kind of freak seriously? But apparently this dean did, and that's, I mean, there's a bunch of other nonsense liberal crap, and he's trying to, anyway, I wasn't buying it. Alright, so then I started working for Papa John's. I was a delivery driver for, I think, a little over, almost, I can't remember if it was almost a year or over a year. And then my brother got his girlfriend pregnant, and he was looking at ways to do, find health benefits for his family and all that stuff, and he started looking into the military and into the Air Force, and that's why he kind of tricked me into going to the Air Force, because he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to join the Air Force, this is something you should do too, you're wasting your talents delivering pizzas and all that. So I ended up signed up for the Air Force, and I, got my orders and went off to boot camp, and He did not. So he was the one who talked me into it, and I thought we were going to go in together and all that, whatever. So I ended up doing that, being in the Air Force for 8 years as a computer programmer. During that time, I saw firsthand the amount of waste and stupidity that is involved in that kind of bureaucracy, that bloated government. So before I went in, I was a pretty devout Republican. When I came out, I wanted nothing to do with government ever again. I was trying desperately to find any way to avoid working for the government again, because I saw everything as a waste of taxpayer dollar. And so a bunch of things that I learned while in the Air Force, I started watching, the Hitchens, atheist versus, Christianity, and creationism versus evolution debates. And I also started watching some Milton Friedman. Ron Paul introduced me to Austrian economics, so I started watching a bunch of Hayek, and there's a bunch of stuff from Thomas Sowell, Walter E. Williams, Peter Schiff, Tom E. Woods. Then I found about Stefan Monolun. At first I dismissed him as, like, oh, okay, here's another crackpot guy, and the more and more I listened to him, I'm like, oh, no, this guy's actually... I kind of dismissed him as a crazy, because he does have some very passionate rant that taken out of context, yeah, I could see why you would view him like as a cultist or whatever, but when you actually start thinking about the underlying principle of everything that he stands for, I was kind of like, okay, now I'm on board, I understand what you were saying, and all that sort of thing. Because once you understand the non-aggression principle and natural rights and all of that, the rest of it kind of falls into place. And that's why I became a libertarian. Once you accept the underlying moral principle, everything else that follows from that is logical, and the logical conclusion is that we don't need a government, and it is possible that we can structure our society without forcing anyone to do anything they don't want to do. Which is actually, yeah. And government, by its very form, requires force. You can't, you can't make a rule, and then when people don't follow it, well, what do? Well, you apply force to make them follow it. Right? That's generally how it goes, and so it's built into the fabric of government. Businesses don't have that, which is why I don't understand people when they say something about corporate tyranny, and I'm like, what is a corporation going to do? You willingly go there. You buy things from them. They don't force you to do anything. You go in there and you deal with them, and if you don't like a business, you don't do business with them. I don't do business with Geico because they annoy the hell out of me, and they still send me flyers and whatever. But that's it. They annoy me with mail, and with their stupid, horrible commercials. That's why, I don't do business with them, and they don't affect my life in a serious way. It's not like they're sending police over to knock on my door and being like, you're gonna take this insurance or we're gonna shoot. No, but government will do that. You're gonna participate in this program you don't want to be in, and if you don't, well, you go to jail, or go directly to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200. That's the government's response. If you don't want to be our customer, then you go to jail. Well, after separating from the Air Force, I went back to college and, tried to start up my own businesses. Some of them failed. I've been successful in some areas, like property ownership and renting out and things like that. It's been pretty lucrative for me so far, and I hope to keep that trend up. And that's me in a nutshell. Hope I'm in a nutshell. I'll end on this note. Oh, great prince, give poor starving Gertie munchings and crunchings. And if you know that film, whatever, leave a comment or something. Nobody ever sees these.